Howdy, you delicious people! I'm here today to review The Best of Times. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and in between those times, we had gone on and watched a movie starring Robin Williams and Kurt Russell. So, I'm sure a lot of people are easy to state that this is just a football film, but there's a lot more going on. We would have two characters, both Jack and Reno, that are similar but then different a lot of ways. We would have Jack, who is to have a number of accomplishments to be on his life. He's to be a really good banker, has a wife, has a daughter, is to have had a well put together education, is to go on and just have a long, luxurious life, it seems, at this point. But then also is to have one failure that everybody within this town is to bring up: a dropped pass that was given to him by Reno himself. Reno is to really be living off his past, being this quarterback of this football team that had possibly been so close to defeat the Tigers. So Reno is to be looking back at the past, having everyone tell him how many numbers of touchdowns he had gone on and accomplished in this and that and whichever game. And he is needing much more so to be reminded about his past, because his present is that he is a car specialist, going on and adjusting the paint or fixing certain vehicles, and is to have a wife that is going to leave him, is going to divorce him, has already decided to go to the Top Hat Motel. So we have these two characters that had been involved in this failure pass that could have won them this game, but didn't. So, with the fact that Jack has been haunted about this one pass, to the point of him bringing this up to every single person he has to probably ever know in his life, watching the recordings within this little supplies room office, he can't get it out of his head. He has to go on and tell everybody about it. He has to talk to everybody about it. And finally, one person is to have recommended him to figure out some way to go on and redo this game. Figure out a way to get the people together to go on and change this game. In all honesty, though, like, you would have thought that even if the Rockets do win this movie by the end, this is technically some rubber match now. Like, but there never would have gone on and legitimately had a sequel to this movie, because that always would have just been a one-off thing. But so we have Jack, who's thrusted with this idea, and so then he goes on and is to manipulate people into doing what he wants. Manipulating the quarterback, manipulating the town, going on and pulling off some pranks and shenanigans to then get what he wants, which is to put this game together. So, by the further and further point of getting to this game, there are dances that happen. There are to be our characters kind of doing this montage and prepping for this matchup. And the further and further they get even so much more closer to this match or this game, they realize the Rockets themselves are going to lose this. So they start to realize like what's really important in their lives beyond this game. And even the town starts to realize what's more important by resurrecting their town, reopening things, like putting forth money to get these businesses booming. So by the time that we actually get to the game, we're already naturally assuming the outcome of all this. But it ends up being such a close game that it ends up just kind of poetically and perfectly being sent off the way this story just kind of really begins. Besides the narration of the whole like, hey, this is the town of Moron that is to have got renamed to be Taft. But so, with that said, I think it's about that time to just state where this movie is to be, of course, located, and eventually push our way into spoilers. The grading of this movie is, I love the fact that this is to just be this kind of just small town story. It easily wins me over by that. But then again, like the focusing of it all just not being all about the whole football thing, and we kind of build to that, really is to be very interesting. Like, it is kind of nice that it seems that a lot of these characters like aren't exactly playing like their normal roles. Like, we don't have Robin Williams who's like delivering joke after joke here. And we are also just kind of like seeing characters that are going on and kind of playing unique kind of roles within this movie than I've kind of seen them in other projects. So good for them. Great. On that, this movie was, I feel, easily epic. It was. Regardless of how you could probably say that it's a slow burn, and a lot of it could probably be annoying because it's all just about that pass and how we would go on to have Jack, who's played by Robin Williams, just consistently bringing that up in the early parts of this film to the point to where everyone else is going to have to turn to him and say, like, yeah, I've been hearing about this pass for 13 years. Like, you've said it enough. So currently this movie is available on Tubi, Tubi, and it is to, of course, have me state that there's a number of other reviews that I would go through and state that there are alternative apps also. If for whatever reason you can't get Tubi within whatever region you're at, or logically, you, even though you can get Tubi for free, maybe Tubi is just not for you. So there, of course, are other apps like Zelifonic, Zelivonic, Manic, Mannic, and so you can go into these other apps and see a plethora of projects for absolutely free. Within there, of course, showcasing ads and whatever at some certain points, but logically, you're kind of seeing that through every single app known to man, anyways. So, yeah. So with that said, let's just go on and push into spoilers so we can hopefully get this review done. Sad thing of it is, I had already gone on and done this whole entire review. I had talked about this whole entire movie, but then mere minutes for when I was wrapping this up, for some reason my tablet just turned off, and when it goes on and does that, the whole video that I'd gone on and done just got erased. So like I'm kind of having some weird goofy tech things and I don't know what the answer for that is. But oh well, like I'm just gonna have to just keep figuring out a way to just figure out how to just keep doing videos. I don't know what happened. But either way, let's go on to say that it is spoiler time. I'm going to go on and, of course, pause this video and get my phone. That is to have either a cast list or to insist to help me figure out how to break down this movie when we get into full-on spoilers. At some point, I think I want to go on and eventually do more sports movies at some certain point. Like, I feel that I can go on and probably try and find movies like the Tom Cruise All the Right Moves movie, or just kind of do other just kind of sports films at some certain point. Stories that just might be interesting enough to check out. Maybe I've probably gone on and heard them at some point, but maybe I've never fully seen them. The Best of Times was one of those where I hadn't fully seen. Like I think I had caught in like the tail end of the movie, but then wanted to finally go on and be like, okay, like what was fully this movie about? So, with that said, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. All right. So the very beginning of this film, spoilers, everybody, is to all be kind of narrated and focused upon the town at first, telling us that at first this town was to be called Moron and had a population of 217. And they had gone on and changed the name of this town as it seemed that it had gotten success in the oil industry and had put together its first Taft Union High School. So we would have the Taft School with their Rockets team name go on and consistently face off against the Tigers, to have consistently gotten loss after loss, 56-0, 82-6, just blowout like circumstances, leading us to be needing to compare this team with a prize fighter. So this boxer had been known as Kid Lester. And so Kid Lester is to have been like a huge success with this town, but then at some point had faced off against Sam Langford. And there was even some people kind of talking around town that Langford didn't really train that well for this fight. And so Lester was thinking like, oh, okay, like this guy is just going to be pushover. Like I'm going to go on and just take this guy easily out. So Lester is to even wanted to state that he's going to take this guy out in the 5th round. But come to find out, yeah, there is going to have been a knockout that was to happen in the 5th round. But it was to be of Lester hitting the floor and defeated here. So Lester, who had gone on to be like so ashamed of himself, left this town to figure out how he could ever have gone on and redeemed himself, and he just disappeared. So we would come to have this town seemingly be infected with mice, to the point of like seagulls coming in and needing to take out the mice, and so like that just kind of created all of this chaos and havoc. But so beyond that point, we would have this football team of 1972, which was to have at their helm a a football player named Reno Hightower, and he was to be their quarterback. And Reno was to be such a wonder kid that they were thinking like, oh my god, like this kid has so much potential, and like he's going to be our big chance at beating Bakersfield. To then go on and have Reno be passing this ball to Jack and have him be the son of a bitch that drops the ball. So Jack is to go on and watch this game with this projector in his supplies office, and he ends up getting interrupted by Marcy telling him that, of course, Ellie is here, and then at some point also the Colonel will want to go on and have a chat with him. So Jack gets out of his office to talk and to Ellie, who is wanting Jack to write up a $100 donation for this production of Fiddler on the Roof. And we also have Ellie that is asking Jack to go on and get potato chips for Jackie's class party. So Jack is to go on, I'm like, okay, Ruffles, and Ellie's like, sure. So we'd have the Colonel that ends up surprising Jack with this massive gift of a portrait of himself to be put behind him. So Jack is to go on, and as much as to, of course, Colonel's knowledge of realizing what he's doing, Jack is going on and pretending like he's busy, thrusting himself onto this phone. So the Colonel is to just be there to just tell Jack, it's like, hey, like the Tigers are backing down, like we're gonna face off against your old team, you know, the team that you dropped the ball on. So the Colonel is to just make fun of Jack and then makes his way out as we realize that the Colonel is Jack's son-in-law because Jack had married Ellie, and that's the whole kind of connection to all of these people. So Jack now is to go on and to still just talk about that pass. He's like, oh my god, like why did Reno decide to, of me of all people, throw that ball too? And so Ellie's going on and like, you know what? Like, I've heard about this whole pass thing for the last 13 years. Like, why don't you go on and meet up with your best friend and ask him why himself why he threw that ball to you? Jack goes on and meets with Reno, never asks him that question. But so we would transition to then Reno, who is talking to a guy named Carlos and is to look at this painting ash-like thing on this van and be like, hey, no, like this guy wants more sharks. Like it's got to look like Paul's Zadora. So they go on and they take the painting off this one other van, and it looks like this other just very classic painting of these fingers and whatever. So like the god and the naked man just kind of reaching out to one another, that classic pose. So we have Jack that makes his way to this shop, and we of course have Jack coming up with some excuse for his car to be fixed on so he can turn around and borrow this other car. So we come to find out that Reno is to talk to Jack and tell him like, hey man, like your car, of course, performs like shit. And like the only way to fix said car is to put $400 in it. You, of course, don't want to put $400 in it, so I'm just going to tell you that the only thing that I can do is put something that's $1.50 into your car, and it pretty much does nothing. And so, yeah, so Gigi is to make her way into this shop also, and is to interrupt the conversation between both Jack and Reno. Because Gigi finally wants her car fixed, which means that Gigi, once her car is fixed, she can leave Reno and finally have the singing career that she's always ever wanted. Because when Gigi is to go on and to complain to Reno about all of the problems that she still has on her car and that Reno hasn't fixed it, Reno is to want to go on and take Gigi and be like, hey man, like, don't go on and uh like kind of put me down in front of my men. It just kind of looks bad. Um, but Gigi had gone on to mention how like there's a noisy Continental and a wet uh Lady D and this and that. Like you have so many other problems going on here. So we have Gigi that finally confronts Reno and tells him, "I want a divorce." And so she whips out this piece of paper and starts reading it out to him. But then is to also state to Reno that at some point she started to cry while writing this note, so she doesn't know exactly what she wrote because she can't read her own handwriting. So Reno is to state like, well, yeah, I know your handwriting really well. So he starts reading the rest of the note, and it seems that she's going to go on and go to the Top Hat Hotel. So so Gigi is to have has wanted for a very long time to get out of Taft, and she's doing this because she realizes that there's no way that she can launch her singing career. So Gigi leaves and walks away from Reno, and so like Jack is to try to go on and comfort Reno here and to tell him like, hey, just a dinner and a movie, she'll be fine. And Reno is like, yeah, like I don't think that like I don't think it's gonna work this time. Like I think that she's really wanting to leave, and I can't fix her car. Like she's wanting to even go on and go to another shop to get it fixed. And like Reno is to tell Gigi, it's like, well, you know what? I've never cheated on you before. So Jack is to go on and be like, oh man, like divorce, like that's a terrible word. And so Jack is to go on and say, like, you know what, like I don't think I can pay you that $400, like regardless of how um like much you're hurting right now, but like, hey, at least I can give you that $1.50, and also ask you, like, hey man, like, can you give me a loaner car? So we come to find that the only car that's really left is just a pile of and Jack takes this car, and Reno mentions to Jack, it's like, you know what, it seems like me and the guys are to think that the only reason why you take these loaner cars is so that way you can go to this massage lady. And Jack is like, massage lady, oh no, like, I never pay for it. Jack turns around and immediately goes to this massage lady named Darla, and he goes into the bed, and they end up having kind of squabbles about Visa or MasterCard Visa, and it seems that she is to need to call in this credit card thing to get a transaction of $60. So Jack is going on and on about this past, this horrible game. So Darla goes on to just be like, well, hey, like, since like you consistently just wanted to just talk to me about this whole event, why don't you go on and recreate it? How about you go on and play this game again? And Jack is like, well, I don't think that's possible. Then he's like, maybe it is possible. And he's like, man, that's a great idea. So Darla is thinking with Jack of like, well, hey, how about we go on and just kind of make $50 worth of fun? So transition, we have Reno who goes to the house, the mailbox, and his son Teddy is there. So they talk about how supposedly Taft is the most nuclear weapon safe place to have lived in. And so Teddy is going on and talking to Reno about, like, hey, how's homework going? Like, how's your mother? How's this and that? So, also Teddy, like, I kind of remember him. I think he had gone on and done like a number of projects and movies and shows and stuff. I think it was in the Growing Pains, right? So Gigi goes on and is trying to shove this massive box out of this door, and she can't see anywhere much outside. So Gigi is desperately asking for her son Teddy's help, and is to assume the person that is grasping this uh, this box to help push out of this door is to have actually been Teddy, but it's actually Reno. So Gigi is going on and on about how she's had to settle for second best, and how that's the reason why she's trying to get out of this town, and again wanting to put her best foot forward on this singing career. And then she drops the box and realizes that Reno is right in front of her, and she probably blames all the reasoning for her not getting what she wants in life on Reno. And so Reno's like, oh, okay, all right, well, like, you know what? Yeah, like, I have wanted to stay in this town because I have, of course, had history here. I have gotten very comfortable. I have had a business and this and that. So Gigi, of course, would just be very upset by the fact that she is to have the life that she's to have. She's surrounded by all of these car parts that are just junk, just lying around all over her house. And, like, if there's a rational reason for why any of them are to actually have been there, she wants to know exactly why any of these pieces are to be where they are. So stating that she wants at least one of them to be thrown away. So Gigi grabs one of the pieces, like, well, hey, why is this piece so important to you? And so Reno starts to rattle off how it's a brake drum, and that it is to have been a certain part of certain piece of certain car. So after him going on and explaining all of this, Gigi's like, well, yeah, like, well, I'll be at the Top Hat hotel. So transition to then have Jack, who meets up with Reno, and he's like, man, I got a big idea. So Jack goes on and is to tell Reno about recreating this football game. And Reno really isn't sold. Like, it takes him forever within this movie to really get sold on playing this game. But then when he really is going through and and actually like going through the motions of a lot of stuff, he then comes to figure out through Jack a way for him to get motivated to play this game, and they start to really rally around this one team member. So even after Reno is to probably think to Jack that this is a good idea, Reno is also thinking to Jack, it's like, well, you know who's probably a person you're going to have to go on and talk about all this, and it's going to have to be the Colonel. So Jack goes on to then drive off to meet the Colonel, and in his head, he's bizarrely coming up with this whole conversation of what the Colonel is going to go on and tell him. And immediately, the Colonel goes on to tell Jack that he makes him sick. So because the Colonel has gone and achieved all of these things, he's to have these booster clubs, sports federations. He's to be the CEO of this bizarre potato bowl. Anyways, so to where Jack is trying to go on and figure out ways to just be like, you know what, man, like, are you afraid of losing? Like, are you afraid that your Bakersfield is gonna lose uh, against Taft? Going on and stating that like Jack is to say that that Taft is the main reason for why he's here. Like it's not all about just that pass. Like it's about the town. And Colonel's like, oh yeah, sure it is. So the Colonel is to start to go on and say that Jack is a failure, and that Jack is to be almost as well as remembered as Kid Lester, and how he had gone on and lost his boxing match. And Jack is like, oh, well, it was just a lunky punch. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. So the Colonel is to just be upset with the fact that he is left with Jack to have married his daughter, and she could have had a more potential football player in Johnny O. So the Colonel is to have this cardboard cutout of this double O'd jersey wearing athlete, and this character is to have this certain pose. And so it seems that the Colonel is to have this shrine of this guy, as well as just a number of these other trophies that this team has gone on to accomplish. And for how he is the Colonel to just be so enamored by all of these trophies and everything that he's accomplished, Jack is to go on and just be like, well, yeah, like every single one of those things is all just a tax write off for you. And the Colonel's like, well, yeah, that could be true, but then also, like, all the more reason for the Colonel to just be like, well, yeah, I'm going to take my write off and beat you with it. So let's go on. Like, let's do let's do this match. Let's put this together. So we would then have Jack turning around at his kitchen or his dining room table and talking to his wife and his daughter about his town needing an enema. Like as if this is Batman 89, where Jack Nicholson states, this town needs an enema. Whoo! Anyways, so Jack is going on and trying to convince both Jackie, his daughter, and Ellie, his wife, about his intentions, and that all of this is to be as similar as Dick Butkus. And of course, we have Jackie who's like, well, I don't even know who Dick Butkus is. And so Ellie goes on to explain that this is to have been uh, a a person who had gone on to be involved in football and is now going and doing beer commercials. Like, man, what a real success. So we have Ellie just more and more not wanting to go on and hear anything about this football game. So, and when Jack's estate thinks about an enema, Jackie is just like, okay, like I think I've had enough conversation and food at this dinner table. I'm gonna go ahead and leave with my friends. So as the doorbell is to ring, we also have Ellie who's frustrated by the doorbell uh, having the same uh, alma mater Taft jingle, and so after Jack used to leave while wearing sunglasses at night, we continue this argument between both Jack and Ellie, which has consistently Jack mentioned about like, well, we're gonna kill Bakersfield, and like he gets more and more like aggressive and very much more like passionate, and this goes on to then have Ellie who's like, hey, like Jackie's out of the house, uh and Jack is just like, oh well, Mr. Weasel's here, mon ami. So they end up in bed together. And we would go on to bizarrely have Jack, who is to do this weird spin and thrust off his blazer, and they further and further start to disrobe their clothes, having, I guess, Jack having difficulties getting his pants off because he still has his shoes on. So, the further and further Ellie and Jack are to talk here, Ellie mentions how she's gone on and like sat through every bowl game and every Monday night football and every like after like news breakdown and everything, that she's just let Jack go on and take the remote and watch. And she's been doing that for 13 years. So at this point in time, finally, Ellie is going to have an ultimatum for Jack to choose between either football or her. And guess what Jack chooses? He chooses to be forced to go to the Top Hat Motel. So Jack makes his way to this hotel room, which of course is right next to a number of people that are obviously playing racquetball or tennis or something, right? They're playing a rousing basketball game in some other room, I'm sure. The thrusting and moaning must have something to do with some kind of workout of some kind. Maybe they're benching a hefty load, if you know what I mean. So Jack, beyond the probably not being able to quickly go to bed and sleep because of the thrusting and the athletics going on in the other room, is to also see a thing of mice within his room also. So he leaves to go on and meet up with Reno. So Reno is going on and repainting a thing of canvas of this Van Gogh van. So going on and stating that this picture could almost be fairly similar to the sky of uh, of this town. So Jack, to butter up Reno, is to get him to this football field, and Jack is to figure out a bizarrish way to try to get Reno in the mind space of this football game. It's like, hey man, like, how about you give me one of those classic poses? Because Jack had tried to do a football pose, and the colonel was just like, "Man, you can't even pose." So Reno is to hear from Jack all these just kind of weird things about like, are you horny to win? uh, you coming pissant? So we would have Reno here that is to go on and do the pose, but then again, he's just like, like, I don't think that this is gonna happen. Like, I don't think that this is gonna work out. Like, we need to go on and like we need to realize that we don't even have an offensive line. So Jack finally puts his foot down here and it's just be like, you know what, Marino? Like, I think that your shop is gonna need to get some refinancing. You know what should that interest rate be? What percentage? Should it go up? Should it go down? 13, 12? What's your lucky number, Reno? Do you feel lucky with those numbers? Do you, punk? Anyways, I'm kind of elaborating here if I haven't done that already. So Reno is like, oh my god, like, seriously, like, you're going that far to just blackmail me or manipulate me to do what you want? So Reno's like, okay, fine. Because Jack is going on and going to turn to the people that are at this bar, the Loyal Order of Caribou. Very strange. But Jack is going on, yeah, I'm going to go to the Caribou and see who we can get for team members. So Reno is going to cut off Jack at the pass and get there early. And so Reno is talking to Charlie. So they're mentioning the fact, or Charlie is talking to Reno about the fact that since there has not been a successful football game in 13 years, that there is only to have been a additional members of town of 2 people, and even one of them isn't in the best of health. So we have Reno that's telling Charlie, hey man, like, Jack is to come to you with this whole pitch, and he's going to say that I'm a part of it, but I'm not a part of it. Don't believe any word that he says. Like, just kind of figure out a way to just, like, kind of not go with what he wants to do. So, we then have Jack turn around and have this whole conference, and it's to ask a number of these Caribou men, like, hey, like, uh, how about we go on and put this football game together? And Charlie is to go on and second it, or just have a number of people who are to be like bestest, like all this kind of weird, goofy lingo, and people just second it, and second it. Anyways, so, but all while we also have the old coach that is kind of giving them all the this rousing speech about, like, well, yeah, like, I'm gonna be the only one that wants this game to really be put together as well as Jack does, because everybody else is really just against it. But also, these guys make up a pretty good point that either a lot of guys that were on the team are either out of town, or the ones that are in town are to be really very much out of shape. So Jack makes the good point of, like, well, yeah, well, we can get like in shape, but then again, they rattle off like there's certain special people, Mondo, Bam Pam, and Dickie Larue, that like they still need on this team. Like, that's their key players. So with all that's just kind of said here, it forces everybody to just say no to this. And Jack is just be like, oh, okay, like I'll figure out some way to just force the hand of these people. So we again have Jack that is looking at this recording of this game, and he's in his office supplies room. So Jack ends up getting a call from Marcy stating that the colonel is on the line, and he thinks that he can kind of get a way out of it, but he can't. So the colonel is on the line, and so the colonel ends up telling Jack, it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't get the team together, and so like maybe like we can work something out. So we come to find out that the colonel is lying, as every single one of the Tiger mascot and every single one of these team members were all there just lying in wait to get ready for this game. So we have Jack who's like, okay, good. Well, like, I couldn't have gotten my team together too. So the colonel is like, haha, what a joke. Like, my whole team's right here. And so they all start like berating Jack, and the colonel ends up calling him Iron Hands. So we have Jack at this point that it's like, oh my god. Like, so the colonel was to say yes to all this, but like they didn't really nail down the rules of what was going to go on within this game. So the colonel goes on and tells him, it's like, okay, like we have to have everybody who was from the 72 team back on, and no one else could play this game, as well as also it has to be NFL style rules. So Jack is to hear all of this from the colonel, and so he goes on to give people all the more reason to just like, okay, like let's get the team together, let's get the band back together, let's go on uh, and work out uh, to play this game. So we have Reno making his way to the uh, the Safari Bowl, which technically he's in the Safari Room, but that's regardless, it's one and the same thing. So we have Reno going on and talking to Darla. It's like, oh my god, Darla, is that you? And so we'd have Reno who's starting to talk to Darla and like, hey man, like how many touchdowns did I had in that game against you guys? And Darla mentioned 7 touchdowns. He's like, yeah, it was 7 now, wasn't it? So while that's going on, we have Jack who ends up getting the replica tiger mascot, and he puts it on and he starts rampaging through town, splashing paint all over these things. But he's first off getting into this vehicle and making his way to these locations. So Gigi and Ellie are just backstage because they're getting ready to go on and perform this song. Gigi is talking how like Reno is just driving around the block, and like it's just sad. So while that's going on, we have Jack who's rampaging and splashing paint all over this sign. And so Gigi is going on and she's talking about how she used to be this cheerleader, and that uh, she was to have been the homecoming queen, and that she was also to be pregnant. Ellie brings that up. So Linda has to be talking about these makeup secrets, which they go on and thank her. And then we see a little bit later that Ellie is to try to put on this little makeup secret, but then wipes it off. It's like, no. So we would go back to Reno, who is waiting for his wife to perform, all the while Jack is covering paint over this high school sign. So Gigi goes on to start performing, and she has her and a number of other women that are next to her as she performs this song. So Jack, as the tiger mascot, is to be throwing paint all over his own office, is to make his way to the Safari Bowl, and is to see that these women are all performing, and he tosses paint all over them, and he runs off, as well as also a number of people are chasing after him. So Reno and Charlie start to notice through this, through the Caribou Bar, that someone had gone on and vandalized it. So this then goes on to then have Jack, who's to break this gavel, and hands this gavel to Charlie. It's like, oh, somebody doesn't want law and order. So Gigi comes into the room, and Gigi is saying that, like, you know what, I don't care. Like, I don't care that I got paint thrown all over me. And Jack turns to Reno and it's like, she cares, she cares. Yeah, she does. Like, you gotta defend her honor. So it all starts to become about everybody wanting to defend the honor of this town. To even the point where Rosie's like, oh yeah, like, I want somebody to defend me. So Rosie, who of course is the old lady who wears the cheerleading pom poms. So everybody but Ellie is really interested in defending this town, and so it finally gets to the point where Reno is like, yeah, like, let's go, and like let's beat Bakersfield, and everybody's like, yeah, let's beat those mothers. So we have this rocket that is, of course, to be this symbol that is like, yeah, like, we're doing it, this is gonna happen. And we start to have all these guys just jogging around town. So Reno and Jack are jogging, and they're saying, like, you know what, like, what we're doing is not enough. We still need our like, we still need Felipe, Mondo, Bam Bam, Dickie LaRue. We still need these guys. So we have this coach that is going on and doing this tackle drill, and at some points in time, some of the guys, they're just falling over. Sometimes they just, like, are just exhausted. So the next thing we see is the town, I guess, working up the dough to get these past football warriors that have gone on and left this town. So we get Dickie LaRue. We get uh, uh, we we get Mondo, we get Bam Bam, we get all of these guys, and at some point, like, these guys have changed so much so that they're unrecognizable. So we start to see that these guys are going for a really rough time through these cardio exercises, these drills. So we would then turn around and have Jack tell Reno, it's like, hey man, like, we need to do something drastic. Like, we need to adjust here. Like, we need to do uh, aerobics. And Reno's like, wait a minute, aerobics? So, yeah, we start to get our guys to now go on and do this hit cardio. Is there to go on and do like kind of almost like CrossFit-ish like stuff. So they're basically sweating to the oldies, hopefully slimming down, but then again also uh, to uh, really to be able to probably build their stamina, if not anything else. So both Jack and Reno, like, this is what they've been doing, and we then turn around and are showcasing what the Colonel is doing, and he's going on and having all of his team guys all in these uniforms, and the Colonel is telling them, yeah, like, we have this playbook, we have 200 plays, and you guys got to memorize all of them. Like, I'm sure we're gonna go on and realize that, like, Jack and Reno and their team, like, they're just gonna have like twigs and sticks on the ground to make their plays. So we come to find out that that is exactly it. Reno is going on uh, and scribbling on the ground uh, where these people are all going to be, and people are to go on and even ask questions like, "Well, wait a minute, hey, like who am I here?" It's like, "Oh yeah, you're the twig, you're the stick, yeah." So they continue to do their aerobics, and this leads Jack to do a number of business deals to resurrect this town. And this leads to this rocket and having a number of kids kind of chasing in front of it. And one of the kids ends up wearing a Ghostbuster shirt, which I thought was really awesome. But so we turn around and we have Reno, who is to be dubbed the Man of the Year, and he's having this kind of very footballish like pose. And so we have Reno, who is tossing the football around with some of the girls in town, and just kind of having a lot of fun and just kind of getting warm and getting loose. So we would also come to find again more of this town is getting rebuilt up. This movie theater is reopening. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on in this film. So we have both Ellie and both Gigi who have kind of rejected their men, and they're kind of both on their own. So the two of them are talking, and Gigi is stating like how everybody has gone crazy in this town, and uh, that they're also just like starting to talk about like, well, hey, like from what I heard, like the guys are getting really in shape and this and that. So Reno appears at the front door and wants to talk with Gigi. She doesn't come to the front door, so Reno puts out all the stops and he starts singing, why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? So close to you, whatever the song is. So Gigi is all of a sudden to be like, oh my god, that is such a low blow. That is such a low. And Gigi all of a sudden is to be so tempted by this song, so much so that she wants to go on and make her way to the door. And Ellie's like, no, we gotta get out of here. We're gonna slide out the back window. So while Reno is going on and singing this song, in the background, we see the two girls are making their way to escape. So Gigi and Ellie make their way back into town to start to see a number of guys from the football team to be jogging their way through town. And so Ellie and Gigi are like, oh my god, like the guys are looking pretty good. They're looking pretty hot. Oh my god, Jackie's getting in shape. Ooh. So Ellie and Jack are just like, you know what? Or Ellie and Jack. Ellie and GD are just like, you know what? Like, maybe we've been wrong about all this. Maybe we can go on and have the boys like come in and we'll have a date night and we'll have to have some ground rules on this date night, but we'll still have one. So Gigi's like, well, like, what could the ground rules be? And Reno's like, yeah, what could the ground rules be? So Jack goes on and tells Reno that's like, well, the ground rules are we can't talk about football and sex. So Reno is like, well, what are we going to be able to talk about? And then even Ellie is looking at Gigi, is like, well, yeah, like, what are we going to talk about? So the two of them are to talk about, like, hey, man, you look hot. Yeah, you look slamming. You look great. Right. So Reno and Jack are making their way to the front door to come to find that Teddy and his friends are there. So Teddy and his friends are really just there to remind both Jack and Reno, because they completely forgot about it because they were so focused on the date, that, hey, man, yeah, like, it's Monday Night Football. And we have Jack who's like, oh my God, that's right. Like, they purposely put this date to be on a Monday night. Ugh. So both Jack and Reno are also to see that Jackie and her friends are making their way out. And so Jack tries to hug Jackie, but she doesn't reciprocate. And also, one of the friends say it's like, well, yeah, like Ellie really misses you. So both Jack and Reno, they're like, oh my God, like, what are we gonna talk about? Like, we gotta figure out something. And Jack is like, you know what? All we need to do is just stay bland and strong. So they go to the door and they realize that it says the words doorbell out of order, but they ring the doorbell. So we push on to this dinner. So the weirdest topics are just kind of coming up beyond, like, hey, how was your day? Like, it seems like you're really getting in shape. Like, what are you doing? No, like, they're talking about the Middle East. They're talking about the nuclear question. They're talking about acid rain. It makes no freaking sense, all the stuff that they're talking about. But I think that this is all really just for a joke, a gag, a geef. But, anyways, Jack goes on to go to the bathroom and he starts to realize, like, oh my God, like, you know what? Like, we should figure out a way to watch the football game as well as also do this date. So while the girls go off to go into the kitchen to pop open their alcohol so that way they can start to get pretty hammered, and they start talking about the guys. So the two guys are trying to figure out how to put this football game together. So and watch it while they're also doing this date. And Reno is like, hey, how about you go to the bathroom and I'll just kind of figure out a way to just kind of delay these girls knowing what's really going on. So the girls make it back to the dinner, and that's when Reno talks about acid rain and also the fact that, like, man, the wine is just going through both Reno and Jack. So when Jack starts to come back, he adjusts the TV and then he goes back and sits at the table. So while the four of them are starting to talk, we would have Jack that is to just go on and look at the game, and he's like, oh, and the girls are like, oh, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, I just have a muscle spasm. Yeah, muscle spasm. So we also have Jack who looks at the game and he's like, oh, good hands. And Ellie's like, what? What about my hands? And Jack is saying, like, oh, like, yeah, your hands are so cold and this and that. She's like, oh, yeah, my hands aren't that cold. So Reno ends up going on and turning to Jack and he's talking about, yeah, only a certain number of minutes left. And Gigi is talking to Reno. He's like, uh, did you just say that we're okay for sex? And so Reno's like, all right, all right. Like, I guess she must be good and freaking drunk. So the next thing, Jack blurts out, oh, what a good catch. And they're like, what? And he's like, oops. So they realize that the TV's on, and we have Jack who's like, oh, who put that there? The Atlanta versus the Vikings or Minnesota. Oh, hey, funny that it's Minnesota out of all places. Anyways, so Jack is going on and saying, it's entrapment, it's entrapment. And the girls are like, yeah, we know what you were pulling, come on. So that forces both Reno and Jack to just leave to make their way back to the Safari Bowl. So Reno just consistently tells Jack, it's like, you know what, you're a shitty guy. Like, you're a shitty shit. You're a shitty. And, like, he just keeps, like, berating Jack to a point of also just saying, like, you know what, like, you can go on and say, like, how, like, I gain respect to an entire team. But, you know, for how just amazing as you could just be, just so much noise and just so much like going on and on and on. Like, you don't really ever do anything. And so then Jack goes on and is to talk about his achievements that he's ever gone on and done in his entire life. So Jack goes on and mentions in the kindergarten he was the quickest to have learned Itsy Bitsy Spider. In the 6th grade, he was voted most to succeed. In the 12th grade, he had won some essay contest. But within that fateful day of him going on and getting into football, he had been the one to have dropped that pass. So we then make our way to have both these characters walking on home. And Reno is to finally reveal to Jack here that the bazooka is dead. That Reno believes that he can't throw anymore. His arm dead. So and Reno is just so worried that he has lived for so long with all of those past accomplishments, all those people going on and having these stories that were so great that he doesn't want to go on and ruin that by uh, going into this other game and coming off as a failure. So Reno is to also tell Jack that Bakersfield is like set to the gills. They're loaded. Like, so both Jack and Reno are to sneak into this practice session going on with the other team, and they're like, oh yeah, we are so dead. There's no way we're gonna go on and beat this team. So we transition to this dance. So we have Ellie that is just far behind on coming to this dance, and she speaks to her daughter about like, hey, have you ever had it where uh, you've had this just one thing, uh, and this and that? And Jackie's like, no, I've never had that problem. And so Ellie's like, oh, I guess it's just good to be young. So Jackie is changing from one dress to the other, trying to find her best looking dress to go to this dance because she's going to make it there. So Gigi is performing at this dance. Reno is in the background. So we finally have Ellie uh, that appears at this dance, and immediately, like Ellie goes to Gigi, both of them go to the bathroom. So while that's going on, we have Charlie who is to announce that Luther Jackson is to make his way to this dance, and he ends up kind of getting berated by certain players. But he's like, "Hey man, all right, okay, man. Whatever." So the girls are in the bathroom, and Gigi is telling Ellie, "It's like, hey man, like we should go on, and like Ellie, you should go on and dance with Jack, and I should dance with Reno." Because like this is gonna be like the highlight of their lives is right here. Like it's not gonna be the game tomorrow. They're gonna lose that game. But like if anything, like they'll have this moment. And Ellie's like, are you sure? And G's like, yeah. So we have Jack and Reno, and Jack is saying it's like, man, they've been in there forever. Like so while all these guys are going on and talking about tomorrow and that Taff won't ever forget their names, Reno, after just hearing this, is like, good God, like I know I'm gonna lose tomorrow, so like, and I'm just forced into this game, and like my wife is gonna leave me after I lose this game, so Reno just starts to just look for the exit and starts to leave. So Jack sneaks his way into the girls' bathroom while Gigi has left to figure out a way to talk to Ellie because Ellie is still in the bathroom. So Jack finally goes on to confess to Ellie. Whoa, my bad. That he had gone on and made a huge mistake by choosing Ellie over this game because he knows that they're going to lose tomorrow. And so more and more Jack has to figure out a way to just kind of butter Ellie up here. And Ellie gets out of the stall, and both Ellie and Jack have this dance. It was just also kind of interesting, this whole bit of dialogue here. But so then we then turn around and have Gigi, who is trying to find Reno to dance with him, and instead she finds him at this shop trying to fix, I'm assuming, Gigi's car. So the two of them hug and dance at this shop, as well as also having Ellie tell Jack, it's like, I want you to kill Bakersfield. Like Sadie's like, yeah, like I'm on your side. Let's go. So we turn to have this old man getting out of this car to the Taft welcomes you sign. This mysterious man that we don't know why he's here. So we then go to the locker room of the Rockets. So a lot of time we see here is to have guys who are struggling to get into their outfits that don't fit. Also, just realizing this, like the guys are all wearing white. They would even go on and state that they had been wearing white at their home field games, which makes no sense to me. Like, I would have figured that their actual home colors would have been green and white instead of white and green, because it makes no sense for the prime color uh, to be like white. Their home, like, this makes no sense. This jersey makes no sense. It should have been green with white lettering, but it is what it is here. But so Jack starts to notice that Chico is going into uh, doing a lot of religious like things going on, and doing the Father, the Son, Holy Ghost, and so Jack is going on and asking like, well, hey, how exactly does it go left, right, or what? How does it really break down? And Chico's like, well, I'm not really sure. So Jack is like, oh, okay, I'll try either way, like, because we're gonna need to just make it through this game. So Jack turns around after kind of tripping and thrusting certain shoulder pads on people. We have Jack that turns to Reno and is talking about the game a little bit. And so, like, Reno ends up telling Jack, it's like, well, hey, like, relax. It's like, you're going to be the hero. Like, if anything, like, yeah, we're just going to, like, we're going to be fine. So we then turn to the game. And so the Rockets are to be the ones kicking off to the the kick returners that are to be the Tigers. So they kick the ball, and the Tigers guy runs it all the way down for a touchdown. Early points. So the Eddie character turns to Jack here. It's like, yeah, man, we're gonna need a lot of luck. And Jack turns to Eddie and it's like, there's no such thing. So we go on and again see uh, the Tigers starting to put points in the board as we have this Jackie O character that is to be such uh, a athlete that he is going on and scoring multiple points here, and we have another touchdown. So we get the offense of the Rockets now on the field, and we end up having the ball going to Luther, it seems, a lot. So Jack is to find out that one of the guys on the defensive end is a guy named Dr. Death, who is supposedly on parole. So when they start lining up all of the characters together here, the offensive line against the defensive line, we have Jack who's now facing off against Dr. Death, and there is a number of just montaging of just seeing Jack just eat the dirt a lot here. But then consistently there is uh, a talking between both Jack and Dr. Death consistently back and forth. So we would of course go on and have this such a game that again leads to have again another 6 points being done uh, by the Tigers instead of the Rockets. So it ends up being 13-0 so far. Uh, in the first quarter, it seems. I thought that would be way higher. But anyways, uh, we eventually see 20-0. Then then we end up going on to see uh, fumbles and issues that are going on in the Rocket sides of things. freaking multiple times of people getting the ball, but kind of making no real gains. So again, seeing more touchdowns being done by the Tigers. So it ends up being 26-0. So we have Johnny O that is celebrating to the point of him wanting to get a high five and then him slipping and hurting his knee. And it's like, oh my God, this is the changing point of this game. Oh my God. So the guy is complaining about a problem with his knee, but then they also are to lift him up via his knee. So it's just kind of weird. So we come to find out that this is going into the second half of this game. So we all of a sudden realize that rain is to happen, and it's quite a massive pour. So we have this marching band that is going on and performing for the halftime special. So Jack then goes on and is to get this sack that has this beer in it, but then also has the tiger costume that he's going to bring in to force then Reno to turn this whole second half around. So Luther is to go on and talk to Reno and say, "Hey man, like yeah, like you had some great passes, but I just should have had them." So we have the coach here that is going on and kind of doing the whole kind of John Voight kind of speech, where it's like, man, for the next 30 minutes will determine the next 30 years of your life kind of speech. So the locker room starts to clean out, and only Jack and Reno are really left here. And so Jack goes on to tell Reno how, like, hey man, like, you might as well take a sip of alcohol because we're going down with this sinking ship. So have a drink, Reno, have a drink. So we have Reno that goes on and is to tell Jack here, it's like, you know what, like, you suck. Like, you sucked 13 years ago, you suck now today. And, like, Jack is again still pushing the alcohol on Reno. So Reno looks into the sack and realizes, like, oh my God, you were the one. You were the guy. So this forces then Reno to toss Jack onto this hook, and he's now hanging there. And so he tosses the mask over Jack's head. It's like, you know what, like I knew that I would have found the one who had painted Gigi, but like now I have him right in front of me. So we have Jack that's going on and telling Reno, it's like, hey man, like, you're not a quarterback anymore. Like, if anything, you're just a van specialist. And uh and so that goes on and makes Reno just so ticked off that while the two of them are talking, Luther interrupts them. It's like, hey man, like, I'm going for my last smoke. And Reno is like, hey man, like, you're soft, you're slow, and your hands are like shit. And so he's like, hey man, you better get out there and this and that. So Reno goes to his locker to get his Converse, his white shoes. And Jack is to go on and say, like, Reno Hightower was the greatest quarterback ever. So Jack is wanting to figure out a way for him to get back on the field, but he's having a hard time getting out of this locker. And Reno has told Jack, it's like, hey, like, you might as well ride this hook because you're definitely not playing in this second half, which will end up being a lie. So, again, we still find that it's 26-0 here, but everybody is just in utter uproar and awe by the fact that Reno is coming out with his white shoes. Oh my god, his white shoes! Oh my god! Oh, so Jack ends up making his way back onto the field. So we start to see that Jack is starting to turn things around. He's starting to go on and make successful plays, uh, and uh, and so our team is starting to get on the board, and we have the colonel's like, well, hey man, like let's get something moving here. So Jack is going on and telling the guys like, well, hey man, like let's get some protection here, like let's get a move on. So uh where let me pause here for a second. Okay. So the defense on the Rockets side ends up getting this interception, and so they run it down to get on the board. And so Reno and the team are just getting really excited. And when Jack is just like, yeah, but then he realizes, like, oh, I can't share my excitement with Reno because, like, I'm still, like, hated by him. So they're getting on the board. So we would start to see some progress with the Rockets. They're starting to get into touchdown territories, and Jack is desperately wanting to watch the game, with also realizing that his glasses are broken. So he's trying to put the glasses together, and they fall off, and he's like, ugh. So the more and more the Rockets start scoring here, it's 14-26. So there's to be a guy in the stands, bizarrely, that is selling hot nuts. And I thought that this was a funny joke, hence why I remembered it. And so one of the guys turns to the guy who's selling the hot nuts. He's like, you haven't had hot nuts in 15 years. So we have a fumble going on. And the fumble is to lead to the colonel thinking, like, oh, yeah, guys, we have the ball. Like, it's okay. Like, we got it. And come to find out the Rockets have the ball. Because if anything, the colonel was trying to milk out the time to wrap up this game. So now that the Rockets have the ball, we would then go on to start to have the Rockets just start to put up some good points. Even more so to now have it 21-26. So yeah, like again, another touchdown, another getting so close to winning this game possibly. So we have the Rockets out there in defense, and Reno turns to Jack and is telling him, "Hey man, like if we get this ball, like you're going out there, like you're gonna play ball, like I'm gonna throw the ball to you, you're gonna catch it this time, and like and you're gonna get your hero thing that you've wanted, and you've manipulated this whole entire town to have done so." So and so that's where, of course, also Reno is to tell Jack, it's like, well, yeah, like I knew I was gonna find who trashed Gigi, and uh, and I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. So they get the ball back via the fumble, and so then that leads like, hey man, like you're on the field, Jack. So The funny thing about this is that Jack's uniform is the whitest out of all the other team. Everyone else is just covered in mud besides Jack here, so I just think it's hilarious. So Jack is in the huddle and he's like, oh my god. And Reno turns to Jack and is like, relax, you're not going to get the ball. Like, I'm going to give it to other people. So Jack tells the guys, it's like, well, hey, if you get the ball, like, get offside so it stops the clock. So we would then have Jack, who is facing off against Dr. Death, and like Dr. Death is consistently stating how, like, oh yeah, I think I broke your back then, and where are your glasses, Casper the Friendly Ghost, and this and that. So we would have the guy get off signs, and at some point they go on and they do a play and they're down on yards, but still, like, the clock is ticking. So consistently, uh, we have Reno that is like scrambling to get everybody on the field and do a play so they can stop the clock. They probably should have spiked the ball, but they don't do that, it seems. So finally, Jack is a turn to Reno and is telling him, like, hey, I want the ball, I'll get open. Like, because before, Jack, when he was getting on the field and he was just so worried, he just all of a sudden at one point just started to run even though the play hadn't even started. So, like, they ended up calling like a red flag on him, or a flag on him, a foul or whatever on him, and that was kind of funny. But so Reno is looking at Jack. It's like, dude, I wasn't going to give you the ball. Like, if anything, like, I want to win this game, so I'm probably going to give the ball to somebody else. So Jack is like, no, I'll get open. Give me the freaking ball. So they make this play, and so Reno sets it up on the ground with all of this dirt and all of these twigs and little pieces here. It's like, okay, you're gonna be that guy. You're gonna be that guy. You're gonna go there. So we have, I think, the center talking to Reno. It's like, dude, you're not really gonna give him the ball, are you? And Reno's like, dude, are you thinking I'm crazy? No. So the play goes, and so finally Jack ends up doing this spin move that he's gone on and done, so much so with his wife, and Dr. Death falters and falls, and so Jack ends up making a break for it. So Reno is now just kind of scrambling in the pocket, figuring out who to throw to, and the only person who is open enough is Jack, so he throws the ball before he gets tackled down. So Jack ends up just fumbling with the fingers of the ball. Then he catches the ball, kind of, and then he's like having it almost behind his back, and he's trying to figure out how to just maintain control here and then run to the end zone to score now 27-26, winning this game, having the crowd go freaking bananas. And they go on, they're carrying off Jack. They've won this day. So we have Gigi going to uh to Reno and it's like, hey, like how are you holding up? And Reno is like, yeah, my knees are for shit, and but I feel okay. So Jack then goes on and meets with Ellie, and Ellie's like, all right, well, like you're my hero, all right. So we go on and have Colonel, who is to go on and like, well, hey, I want a rematch. And the Colonel is to hear, like, some people just kind of make fun of of Jack, and the Colonel is like, hey, that's my son-in-law. All proud, but then he ends up falling in the dirt. It's funny. So we have Ellie that's telling Jack, it's like, hey, let's like let's make it on home. So, uh, we then have Reno that turns to Jack. It's like, hey, 99, nice catch. So, the way that this movie is to wrap up is we see that this guy is to be wearing this coat that says Kid Lester on it, and he walks off and he does this little fist pump. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that was the Easter egg thing. Just be like, oh yeah, I guess this guy after all was to luckily have gone to this game to be there, as well as also like have his comeback. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here so I can put this video out. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Like for this one, I tried to just get this one done as quickly as possible, so that's my rush. And plus, also realizing this movie's an hour and 40 minutes, and I just kind of barely got under that marker. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.